Hey guys, what's up? It's Cosmic Crystal, and I am here this morning before I head out to work having my little coffee. I don't drink as much as I used to, but I like to treat myself. Um, so this morning felt like that morning for me. So I wanted to talk to you guys just a bit about my twin flame journey because I've been on this journey now for about 18 months. It started November 2016, and I'm telling you guys this story because I want to record it, number one, just as a record for myself and for others that are on this journey, but two, because right when I thought this thing was over, it has flipped and it's still going. So I want to share my story so I can connect with other divine feminines and divine masculines out there, and compare notes, because I think that there's a lot of fanfare around the twin flame phenomenon, but it's also like a very crazy journey. So I want to put myself out there with kind of a pretty explicit detail, just to connect with people, maybe give people clarity about this whole thing. You might find that after you hear my story, you're like, oh, that's definitely not a twin flame situation. Or you might find that after you hear my story that we're in line and it can confirm for you some things that you might be wondering. I mean, I spent so much time with question marks around my head, it almost drove me insane. But doing this channel has really been helping my own healing, growth, and evolution, which is what this journey is about. So I'm going to start, not even in 2016. I'm going to go back to 2015, all right, before I met my twin, before, when I was in a marriage. I was married. I'd been married in 2012 to somebody who I had been with since the year 2006. And we had a really healthy, positive relationship for a really long time. We were both two very spiritual people. We were both artists. We collaborated and created together. We had businesses together. We were a couple who, when everybody saw us, we were hashtag goals. We were that couple, on the block that we lived on. Everybody called us favorite couple. We lived in New York City together, and we were part of a community of people who loved us, who appreciated us, who cherished us, and who, as a couple, would remind people of love. We were very loving. We were like best friends. And that was the thing. We were like best friends. And so the relationship lacked a particular spark and passion, though we lived together well, we worked together well, and we rarely ever argued. And we rarely ever argued, I think, because of that lack of passion. And so we were married in 2012, and, soon, about a year after marriage, I had just... I had gone through just a number of things, a miscarriage, a house being broken into, a car accident. It was like a lot, within the first year of marriage. We had moved from New York to California, which is my hometown. And things were just really not feeling really great. And things started changing. I remember it just got really weird. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this isn't right. I'm not feeling anything. I'm not feeling a connection. However, that was my husband, and, I was being a wife. I was supportive. I did all the things that I was supposed to do. But what was happening was I was with somebody who was also kind of going off on their own mental direction. So I remember yearning very much for attention and going on dates, and, my husband had financial issues, so he couldn't really take me out much. But I used to always think, what it would be so nice if he just did something like wrote me a poem or, took me on a drive. Like, I would really want that. And I'd mention it to him, but he would never do it. And in my heart, I kept saying, why doesn't he just write me a poem or take me on a drive? Like, these are romantic things that I love that don't cost money, and I would mention it, but it would just never happen. And so I became very frustrated because there was no love in action. There was no emotion in action. There was a lot of stagnation. And so during that first year of marriage, I remember being at the laundromat, taking out some clothes from the dryer, and my wedding ring just snapped in half and fell on the floor. And when that happened, my higher self knew what that meant. But my human self totally was like, nope, I'm married, I'm in this, whatever, I can get another ring, no big deal. Well, about a month, so I didn't have a ring. So then a month later, my husband lost his ring. So we didn't have rings. And that was starting to bother me. And so I remember, once again, expressing to him, I really need a ring, I never got a ring. And I remember saying to him one time, and it was really random. I said to him, this is probably like 2015. I said to him, well, what if I'm at work and somebody flirts with me? I should have a ring so they can just go away from me. But long story short, I never received that ring. And I was one who, that my younger self didn't care about a ring. But as a wife, I saw the work and effort I was putting in as a wife and saw how important that the symbolism of the ring was. So suddenly I was feeling this ache. I was like, why? I was like, why doesn't this man doesn't want to get me a ring? He doesn't want to take me on a date. He doesn't want to do anything with me. And so the conversation then began, and we were two spiritual people. So our conversation went something like, he realized that he was kind of holding me back, and we realized that we were evolving and cycling out of each other's lives. So that was the conversation that was kind of hanging over our marriage in 2015, and I was still, trying to make it work. Because that's what you do when you're married. You don't have the intent on not being with the person, so you try and try and try, oftentimes beyond the life of the relationship. So that's there. So now let's bring it to 2016 May, okay? And actually that's when I first initially had contact with my twin. I work with young people, and I was in my program, working, helping out, and our program had many different math teachers cycle through the years, always cool people. Well, one day when I'm at work, a new math teacher is introduced to everybody. And mind you, at this time, I'm married, but I'm headed toward divorce. It's like that realization has come to both of us, but now it's about doing the actual work to make it happen. So this is May of 2016. So the math teacher comes in, and the force of energy that I felt when I saw this man was like it hit me over my face and damn near knocked me off my chair. And I was just trying to be cool. So I shook his hand lightly and kept helping my students. Like I was not trying to even explore whatever that feeling was, because I was a married woman. Even though I knew I was going where I was headed, I was like, I don't ever want to. When you're married, you don't want to feel that. But also when you're married and you feel that, your marriage is over. And that was one thing too. I just remember that day, I was like, oh my God, whatever that feeling was. I mean, it was beyond any feeling that I'd ever felt with my husband or any man that I had dated before. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't want to see that person. Whoever that guy is, I'll stay away from him. And so there's a summer program that we do. And at that time, math was in a different department than my program of English. So, I didn't see him that summer, and, whatever, when thinking about it. That's how my summers always were. Many years at that job, me, as the English department, always separate from math every summer. So then the fall begins, and, here I am again, and now it's me and the math teacher, and, I'm just finding that every time I see him, I have this wave of feeling and for me, as being a spiritual person my whole life, like I noticed it because it was very different than what I had felt before. The energy was heavy. It was hitting me upside my face. It was something that I had to notice, but I wasn't trying to notice it because I was trying to focus on what I was trying to do in my life, which was, get out of my marriage in the most healthy ways possible. So I wasn't trying to date anybody or have feelings for anybody at all at that time. So it was one of those things where I guess you can say that I was the runner. I would be sometimes in the conference room, and he would sit down and talk with me, and I would hop up and walk out because that whatever that energy was, it was so strong, it made me uncomfortable. Um, but every time we chatted, our conversations would be so great. They'd be so, and they'd be awesome. Oh, just to run it back, when I first met him, the reason that I even met him in that room at this particular school, which by the way is the same high school that my mother and father attended and met at, and I think we even met in the same building, which they spent the most of their time in. Um, when I met him the first time, there were a few things that were going on in my mind as a woman who was ending her marriage. I had a lot of fear that kept me in my marriage because there were so many things about my ex-husband and I that were so special and important to me, in terms of lifestyle. For example, I cooked many of the meals by scratch, and I was really about having a healthy home because we had vowed to each other that we would never, we just were not trying to be on prescriptions and medication. And so maybe the second time that I meet this particular instructor, he's just saying things like, it's like he said something like, oh yeah, I got to do this because I want to make sure I'm never having to take any medications. No, I got to stay away from those prescriptions. I'd be like, why is that guy saying, he would say things that I was thinking, and they were related to the fears that were keeping me in my marriage, as if I couldn't find somebody else that had these ideals. So while I was hanging on to my ex relationship, because I'd say, well, I mean, come on, we both want to live healthy lifestyles, and that's important. So, that would be hard to find. Well, the universe was like, oh, this person is also interested in that. And so I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, I guess there's more than one person that thinks like that. And I was very, very singularly minded, of course, in my marriage. So I thought he was the only one, that could do these things. So I just remember going, that's interesting. That guy, like he said something that I think a lot about. No biggie, right? Well, like stuff like that kept happening. So one day, I might be bouncing all over the place with this, you guys. I'm doing my best. We'll see how this goes. So one day, when we're at that school, the same school that my parents met at, we're in the parking lot. And we're in the parking lot not because he's teaching in my program, but he's taking a class that's just so happening to meet downstairs. It's like he's not even supposed to really be there. He was working on getting a higher degree. He would park his car right, like kind of, parking lot. So my car would be parked here. He'd park his car here. And I noticed that, just like the last digits of my license plate was 6'3", and the last digits of his license plate was 3. I was 6'3", so he's 3'6". And his car was dark, and my car was light. And I would just always look. I'd be like, there'd be an aura or an energy around the car and the parkation, okay? And I'd be like, what is it with this car and this guy? So one day as we're walking out of the building, I don't even know what it was, why I'm walking to the parking lot with him, but I was walking to the parking lot with him. And he asked me, he says, have you heard of the feminine divine? And in my mind, I was like, feminine divine, and I've heard of the divine feminine. I knew nothing of twin flames at this point, mind you. I had heard of the divine feminine more so in the context of like Holy Scripture and things like that. And so I just said to him, no. And I to me, I was like, well, he said that backwards, but I didn't say anything about that. I was just like, whatever. And that was it, So fast forward, now we're in the office together in November, and it's like, it feels almost like this guy is coming for me. Like he always wants to come talk to me and, talk to me when I don't necessarily want to talk to anybody. So one day we're sitting at this table and he brings his laptop over to me. And, I'm the writing instructor at my job and the English instructor. So, he says, I wrote something and I want you to take a look at it. Tell me what you think. So I'm like, oh, cool, So I look at it, I read it, and it's like a poem. And the poem is about a man who admires this woman. He has a crush on her. And it's also like a very sensual poem. It's also like a very intellectual poem, okay? Now, I'm a creative writer, so it was like speaking to me in all sorts of my languages. And mind you, I had just come out of this marriage where my ex-husband had written me a poem one time when we first dated. And it was just so romantic to me. And I had longed and longed for him to do that again. And he just never did it again, even when I asked. And then ladies, if we ask too much, it feels like it's not coming from your heart. We don't want it anymore. So that was kind of what was happening. So all of a sudden now, me knowing somebody, like I've always been a manifester in my life. I've always, ever since I was small, I've always been aware of my power to manifest and aware of the manifestations that come into my life. So it spoke so much to my heart. I was like, wow. So in my mind, I'm like, well, I have a crush on this guy. I wasn't going to say anything, but I mean, why else would he show me this poem? If he's like, obviously has a crush on me, like, why would you bring me a poem about crushes and sensuality, And so that began. He would always have a poem he wanted me to read, and it was always of a sexual, sensual nature. And it was also of a spiritual nature. And it was like speaking, I remember reading it, I was like, it felt like I'm not somebody who writes erotic things, but if I did, I would be like, oh, I would say these things. And it was very erotic to me. It was very romantic to me. And I was coming out of a place of such like a deficit of expression of love and devotion and sensuality that it was truly quenching a deep thirst that I had. And so every time I saw him, he'd have a poem, for me to read. And one of them I remember was really sensual, and we were having a text message back and forth about the sensuality of the poem. So it's like this inadvertent sex talk, right? And for me, I'm coming out of a marriage that had no passion and very little sex. So I was like, oh my God, who is this amazing man? But I kept it cool because I was still going through my own process. But I was like, the passion I was feeling was like a passion I'd never felt with anybody, and definitely not even my husband, which was, for me, the tell of the fact that, I didn't need to be in that relationship anymore. And so, I remember talking to him because I was in a transition in my life. I was looking for more work. I needed the money to get on, get on my own, get my own place. And I remember having a conversation with him about that. And so, one day he lets me know that the place where he works is actually looking for an instructor to come in and fill in when teachers are absent. And so I remember I got hired so quickly. And before I knew it, I was working at his school. And at this point, I'm so starry-eyed, but I'm also like in the midst of I'm almost finished filing my divorce paperwork. So I'm just trying to keep it cool. But the emotions now are so overwhelming. I'm like a schoolgirl. I'm just like thinking he's amazing because we're now having these long conversations and we're really connecting, and he seems to be spiritual like me, because in the writings that he would share with me, there was all these laces of spirituality. And then in our conversation, there were laces of spirituality as well. And so, I was smitten, I started working at his school a day before school left for Christmas break. And as I'm teaching in this history class, he comes into the classroom with a black bag, and he walks right up to me. I'm working with students. He walks right up to me, and he opens the bag, he says, pick one. So I go in the bag, and it's like these soaps, these really nice smelling soaps. So I pick one. I was like, oh, nice soap, smells good, cool. So I have my little soap, And then after school, we're talking about the poetry and we're exchanging ideas. He's like, oh, well, you should write me something, and send it. And I'm like, okay, you want me to write something in the key of what you've been writing? I don't really write like that. But all these sensual feelings were now coming up. And these were feelings that were so blocked within me. I hadn't felt these feelings, that sensuality, in so long reading his words, like the floodgates opened. Having conversation with him, the floodgates opened. AKA, really, it was my heart chakra that was opening, but it was also like, other chakras that were opening because he was really tapping into my sensuality. And so I wrote him a poem. And in the poem, and the type of person I am, I'm not a beat around the bush type of person. I'm pretty straight ahead. Like, I just don't have time for that. I'm a Libra Scorpio cusp, so I'm laughing and smiling with you, and then I'm done. Okay? So I write him this poem, and this poem is like, in the poem, I'm talking about just these invisible forces that pulled me toward him and all these things. Like, my heart is open. Like, you're amazing, right? You feel like love. Like, because that's how I am. I let it out. I have no shame. And I sent it to him. And I don't remember what his response was. But I just remember that now we're on Christmas break and I didn't quite hear from him. But for me, I was like, hey, I just kind of like put myself out there. So I remember texting him because I was confused. Like, at this point, it's like I'm reading all these sensual poems from this man, and there's language in the poem. He's saying things where it makes me feel like he's inadvertently talking about me. There were certain things. Like, for example, I have one coworker who always brings me a cup of coffee. This is when I drank coffee every day. I had to get off that. But, I had one coworker, he would always make a big pot of coffee. He would come, he'd pour it for me, he'd bring me the creamer. It was just so nice and polite. And so in the poem, he might say something like, she doesn't even have to make her own coffee. Okay? So it'd be like little things like that. In every poem, there'd be like 3 or 4 things that would directly like speak to me. So I felt like he was speaking to me through his poetry, this sort of low-key flirtation, understanding my situation, knowing that we weren't really trying to flirt, but there was an energy there that was undeniable. So I let him know that the poem that I wrote was for him. That was how I felt about him. And of course, what happened afterward was like, and I asked him, I said, are the poems that you're showing me about me? Because I was confused at this point. And that's when everything changed. He's like, no. I just respect your craft and artistry. And I just wanted to know what you think. I write those poems for the women I'm dating. And I was like, oh, whoa, oh my God. Okay. I just embarrassed myself. So I had to just sit with that. And it was crazy because I was like, well, I'm so confused because I feel all these things and it felt like it was being reciprocated. But then the moment I spoke up, it was like almost like he was looking at me like, oh, definitely not. Like, you? And I was like, what? So there was that. And so, but now mind you, now I'm working at his school. So that's happening. But then we also, the job that we actually met at meets on Saturdays. And so on Saturdays, we'd be at work together and we would spend every free minute talking to each other. And like, it was obvious to everybody in the office that there was something, energy happening. Okay. But I've been made clear now that these poems are not about me. They're about all the other women you date. You just want me for my skills. I'm an editor. Once again, it's like, and so for me, it hurt and it triggered me because what that was saying to me was like, he didn't see me sexually at all. Like so I went from feeling highly sexually exalted by this exchange to like the opposite of like, oh no, you have feelings, like you can feel passion. It just felt like I was chopped off at the legs and it just really hurt. And it triggered things. But it's still my coworker. So I still have to go to work and see this person. And I go to work and see this person and they're still in my face, still talking to me. And I'm thinking like, you should think I'm crazy because I misinterpreted this whole thing. And you should at least not even try to show me any poems. But we couldn't keep away from each other. And so we started going out for coffee after work on Saturdays. And at that time, he had told me that he was seeing somebody, Actually, when I had asked him about the poems, he's like, yeah, he's like, oh, it's for the other women, right? So you're seeing people, you're dating people, that's fine. But I don't understand if you're dating people, why we're going out for coffee every Saturday for and talking at the coffee shop for 4 or 5 hours. So during that time, I found out that we had a lot in common. Like, okay, we went to 2 different high schools, but my high school was like the nerd high school. It was also like known for all the pretty girls. And so he would come, and his high school was known for the jocks, and his high school was kind of hood. Okay, so it was like, in my mind, I was like the cute boys went there, the rough around the edges boys that us good girls tend to be attracted to in that young age. That's the school he went to. It's also the school that my mother taught at. It's also the school that he and I met at. It's also the school that my parents met at. So that's high school. That's where he went. But what he would do in high school is he would come to my high school to look for girls, right? And I remember, I knew the crew he hung out with. He hung out with like cool kids. I was a nerd, He hung out with the cool kids, and he would be at my high school after school. He'd be hanging out with these guys. They used to come up and they'd be standing in a circle. I remember this vision of them because I would drive past those guys on the school bus. And I would just always look at them like, the cool kids, they're always doing something more fun. Us nerds are on the school bus going home. Look at those cool kids hanging out, dating, driving to school. So I always, saw them as those other kids like that, look at them over there, right? Well, he was in that group, and he was very good friends with a girl who teased me a lot from like, this girl teased me from like 3rd grade to like 5th grade. Then we didn't go to junior high school together. Then she showed up at my high school. I was like, what is she doing here? This girl torments my life. So that girl, let's call her Jane. Jane is like one of his good friends. They grew up together. And then I also found out that I had known, he had dated quite a few girls that I went to high school with. So now he's running down the list of his ex-girlfriends. And I'm like, oh my God, I know your ex-girlfriends. I know your ex-girlfriends. And the type you go for is the opposite of me. The type he goes for is like, see, I'm a black woman. I weigh about 175 pounds. I'm about 5'6", but the girls he goes for very, very light-skinned, barely black, if black at all, women. He's definitely not interested in anybody who's as brown as I am. And he eventually made that clear to me, but we're going to get to that part. So, I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, because in my mind and my life, I've only dated people I felt a great connection with. I've never necessarily had a type. My type has always been an energetic type as opposed to a physical type. And as such, my relationships have been pretty positive. They've been positive until they kind of run out, but there's never been anything like my conversation with him about relationships, all the heartache and pain. It's like, well, because you're dating somebody based on their look, you have a type and you're attached to that look. So we'd have these conversations at the coffee shop, and, we just had so much in common. It's like everything. It was just so weird. And so at that time, I remember I wanted to hang out with him so much more. I wanted to date him so bad, but my divorce wasn't going to be final till the summer. And, I had just moved out and got my own place. So I was so fresh and new. I wasn't really trying to involve myself with anybody. However, this person was pulling me to them, and it was crazy. So, one of the things that I remember, another thing that was missing in my marriage, like my husband didn't notice things about me. He didn't notice that I liked certain things. Like he was asleep at the wheel, y'all. It's okay though. He's a lovely individual. But this guy at my job, he was noticing everything. Like, for example, I was talking about how I was interested in buying a house, and talking to coworkers. A coworker had just purchased a house, and for me, it was like a dream I was trying to get to. But at first, I just need to get my independence and get my little rental, But one Sunday morning, I get a text, and he says, hey, because he lets me know he owns a few houses just outside of where we live in the city. So Sunday morning, he texts me, and he's like, hey, do you want to go on a drive up to some of my properties? It's a beautiful drive. And I was like, of course. So I go with him on this drive. And when we are driving, there, it's a beautiful drive, first of all. It's like the perfect day up the 405 in Los Angeles, no traffic, like gorgeous scenery. We go to his two homes to check on them. And I'm thinking, why is he bringing me here? Because in my heart, I was like, what's really good? Why? But no, he literally brought me to his two houses and nothing happened. Like, we looked around and we went. And we both have a background in making music. And so we went to like his friend's house and like we recorded a song together. And the funny thing is, my background is actually in making hip hop music. I was a hip hop artist for many years. But I have a Jamaican father, and it was always like a quiet dream for me inside my heart. Like, I'm like, ooh, I want to make a reggae song. I want to do a reggae song. So he invites me to do a reggae song. And I just remember I had so much fun, and I was thinking, oh my God, this was like such a heart's desire. It was a blast. And I just remember being on cloud nine, taking this drive because I love long drives, and making this song. I mean, it was just like bliss. And I just was like having all these feelings, but I'm like, I don't know. I mean, for me, the stuff he was doing, I thought he liked me, right? To let me know in the comments, am I crazy for thinking this guy liked me from all this? Like, the job he got me allowed me to move out, find my place in perfect timing. And it's interesting. So when I got my place, my apartment is the number 66. And the number 6 has been coming up for me a lot in this journey and this whole thing, which is kind of what makes me feel like this person I'm dealing with, my twin flame, is a past life person, because my apartment is number 66. When I got to work on Monday, the day that I moved in my apartment, 66, I come to work and his shirt, he's wearing a shirt that has a number 66 on it. And I'm like, what in the world? So now, mind you, one of our many conversations that we'd had, he had introduced me to astrology on YouTube. I had no clue that there were astrologers on YouTube, tarot card readers, or any of that until I met him. He showed me a video from the Leo King. And this video from the Leo King, like, it was just talking about the astrology of the time and how we needed to dive in, don't be afraid of things, all this stuff that was just helping push me forward. But then I remember on the side, there was like some tarot card video, and the heading really stood out to me. So I clicked on it, and it was like saying my situation. So it is actually through him that I even got introduced to like YouTube tarot and YouTube astrology. I wasn't thinking about that stuff, right? So, so now, like, we've just had this really kind of nice day. I don't know what, it wasn't a date, but we had this day. It was a beautiful Sunday. We were gone all day. We took a drive. We made a song. And then on Monday, when I get to work, it's like he didn't mention it. He didn't talk about it. And he never mentioned it. He never talked about it. Well, for me, that's like the worst thing anybody could do to me. This is something that I hate. Like, we have a great, great time. Well, let me rephrase that. This is something that I love to do. I love to have a great time with somebody and then talk about what a great time we had, like the next day or the day after. Like, it's so amazing. Ooh, ooh, ooh. But I wasn't getting able to do that. And so I remember it was making me so angry because I was like, why do people always do that to me? Like, what? Oh my God, not again. Like, even with this guy at my job, like what? So now it's like I'm being triggered. And he never brought it up. And I was like, what the heck, right? Well, I guess apparently, and for me, it was interesting because it's like, apparently he was dating somebody, but in my mind, I'm thinking, like, if you're dating somebody, why are you bringing me, like, to your friend's house to record? Why are you bringing me to your other homes? Like, why are you having tea with me after work? Like, all you have to do is don't do it. Like, you're with somebody. Like, what do you, and so, there was always that. And so I guess, of course, obviously what happened is the girl found out that he brought some other chick to the friend's house to record a song. And so after that, there was never any coffee. There was never anything. And even when I saw him at work, there was distance. And I was okay with that because, I mean, the connection was so strong for me. I wasn't really trying to have that. I didn't really want that. I wanted to clear my energy of my marriage and have my alone time. I mean, I had been in my relationship for 11 years. And so I was actually looking forward to singlehood. And I'm loving it right now, by the way. Like, you have to be great to lock me down at this point because all this good freedom, it's tasty. So now I'm like feeling heartbroken. I'm like, oh my God, no more coffee dates, like, and no more drives. And like, this man was giving me these things that I had been craving for years. And they came to me and then they got taken away, and it got taken away too under the guise of almost like, you're not worthy, you know? And so I was so sad. And then it was around spring break, and I don't know, I missed him. And he like texted me on act, like he text back and forth. And then one of the things he texted me is his address. And I was like, so I'm thinking you got the wrong person, you know? And he's like, oh yeah, sorry. But then he basically invites me over to his place. Anyway, now he lives about a mile away from me. Okay, we live in the same neighborhood. So I go to his place. And once again, we're talking for 6 hours. It's the same thing. We meet and it's like, and it's all the feelings. And I'm like, I leave and I'm like, fuck. What is that feeling? But now I'm confused because I'm like, I know this person doesn't like me. But what is this feeling? And why am I at your house if you don't like me? You understand? Like, I understand. We're adults. There's all this energy and I'm at your house. It's not like there's no energy. And I'm definitely not I'm not the only one that feels that. But I'd be at his house. And so that started the sort of trend of me coming over to his place and just hanging out, smoking weed. This is California, so I'm not going to act like I don't smoke much anymore. But at that time, and for many years of my life, I smoked a lot of marijuana. I was in the entertainment and music industry. It just kind of came with the worlds that I was in. And so we'd smoke and talk, and we talk about everything, religion, spirituality, politics, and we both were really into interior design. And so I had just got a place. He had just moved into his own place. And we talk about design stuff. So now when I'd go to work, he'd show me something that he'd think that I would like design-wise, and it would be like the perfect thing. And so one day I was like, I need to really talk to this guy because, like, I'm having feelings and I don't know, like, what to do. Like, so I was sitting on his couch and I said to him, I said, I'm trying to figure out who I have feelings for, you or just the guy in the poems, right? And so he didn't say anything back. And so that was it. I left his house about an hour later, and I was like, I don't know what happened with that. I put it out there, and nobody picked it up. So the next day I'm at work. And at this point now, I'm not working at his school anymore. I've transitioned to a new place, a new position. And I get a text from him right at the end of the day. He's like, I told you that I was seeing people. I don't know why you feel this way. I don't understand where this is coming from. All I wanted you to do was like edit my poems. Like, I just want to know what you think. These are for the women I'm dating. Oh, and by the way, none of them like the poems and they don't like me either. And hopefully that makes you happy. So I'm like devastated because this man just let me know he thinks that I'm not shit. And also the women he was dealing with thought he was not shit. So, I was so devastated. I said, wait, don't, and mind you, I'd been in a relationship for 11 years. So I've never had a text fight. I've never had any conflict come to me via text because me and my partner, we weren't on that because we met before that. So even just that, getting an awful message on your phone, like, it was devastating to me. And I was like, I can't type fast enough. I have to see you. So I went to his house and I was like, okay, what the fuck? And all I know is I poured my heart out because that's how I am. Because at the end of the day, I felt something that was amazing. And so I told him, I said, I think you're amazing. I love how I feel when I'm with you. Sorry that I misconstrued shit, but I couldn't deny, the feeling. And 3 hours into the conversation, he at least admitted the connection. But he's like, I mean, just because it's a connection, and I realized in that moment, he's not used to having connections. Where all my relationships, I always had a connection. He's not used to having connections. So, of course, why would he recognize it? He's used to saying, oh, this woman is pretty. Let me see if I can connect with her. And it never worked for him. And I think that was the lesson he had to learn. So, I was devastated. And I left his place. And I remember that after I left his place, I left thinking, I was like, I'm never going back there. I'm never going to see this man. I'm over this, right? So then when I get home, there's a text that he sends me. And the text is like, thank you for saying what you said to me tonight. I really appreciate it. And for me, I was just like, why do you send me any text? Leave me alone. Let me cry. I was devastated. I was home crying in my pillow. I had all these feelings. And it was almost like I swore the universe was saying to me, no, you can have what you feel you can have. I felt so affirmed by the universe. And then it was all not real. You can't have it. You feel these things, man, but you just know. No, and it brought up issues of worthiness and all of that. So he texted me saying that thank you or whatever. I didn't text back because I was devastated. That was a conclusion to me. I don't have anything else to say. I misunderstood. I'm sorry. I put myself out there. I look like a fool. I'm not trying to talk to you anymore. Thank you. Close it. So I didn't respond. And so 24 hours later, he responds to me crazy text. I mean, I remember what it said, but it was just mean stuff. We can't be friends after this. Da 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 da. And I was just like, oh my God, I've embarrassed myself. What have I done? And I'm thinking well, I haven't dated in 11 years. So clearly I just don't know what I'm doing and I fucked up. And I'm embarrassed, but I'm also fine with being embarrassed. I can totally, because I was a performer for many years. So I really don't get embarrassed. I could show up at work and be fine. Okay. But I was heartbroken and devastated and felt like he was playing a cruel joke on me because it's he was listening to the things that I wanted and hearing conversations I was having with other people around my job. He was presenting those things to me. And then but then letting me know I was also not worthy of those things or not worthy to have those things, in any kind of permanent way. I could have them on a whim, but never in a planned out way. And I had been getting that from men my whole life, and it even started with my own father. So it was triggering deep unworthiness that, by the way, my young self thought that I had pushed away all those issues and solved those issues by getting married. It's I'm married, so I don't have any more daddy issues. I don't have any self-worth issues. I'm good. No, they were still there. And my twin flame journey helped me eradicate those things, and I'm better for it. But it was hard for me. So this was around the time I was still performing. And, at the time that my marriage ended, I had also decided that everything in my life had to end, even my performance and all the things that I was doing before. It was just over for me. So my final show was in Seattle, and it was a full moon, I remember. And I was so devastated from this situation with my twin. I was heartbroken all the way up to Seattle. I performed. It was the worst show I'd ever performed. My energy was low. When I got to Seattle, I got a text from him. It was 2 days after the whole text fight, and he asked me, he wants me to come over and talk because of some of the things he said. Because as he was texting me, I was like, hey, keep texting me like this because it's making me like you less and less. And it was so interesting how he stopped texting really after that. I was like, well, if who wants a person that doesn't like them to like them? So keep texting, keep being yourselves and I'll like you less. But, so 2 days later, he wants to have a conversation with me about what he said. But I let him know I was in Seattle, so I couldn't do that. So I said, we can talk when we come back, when I come back. So when I came back, it was Mother's Day, that Sunday. I thought about calling him, but I didn't. Because, it's Mother's Day. I was with my mom. So that Wednesday, I called him because it was on my mind. I wanted to not call him, but I was weak. I was like, I have to figure this out. It's unsettled. So I gave him a call. I gave him a text, actually. I sent him a text. And he says, oh, well, my mom is in the hospital. So I'm at the hospital now. So I was like, oh, definitely not a good time. But then a few hours later, he's back home. He's like, hey, come by. Now, his mother had had a stroke that Friday and had just had heart surgery or something. And so once again, like, I'm thinking, why? Your mother just had heart surgery and now I'm at your house? Where's your girl at? That was my just real human question. Like, and why am I here? You know, where's your girl? I'm the crazy lady at your job that thinks your poems are about her, but they're about everybody else. Why are you even inviting me to your house? So I come over there and we have a conversation, and he doesn't even really bring up what he said he was going to bring up. But what that did was it set us up hanging out again. And so now we're hanging out. Oh, no, that's what it was. He lets me know. He says, well, you know, this summer I'm going to be working at the same site as you. And I was like, no, are you kidding? I have to work with you all summer? I have to see your face all summer? So the summer program begins and we start hanging out again, like 2 or 3 days a week after work, talking, smoking, drinking, you know. I was super lonely at the time. I had been living on my own now for maybe 4 months. I had walked away from all my friendship groups and my relationship. I had truly cleaned my slate. He was literally the only person in my life. It was so weird. I remember sitting on the couch and looking at him. I said, you know, it's so interesting. Nobody has access to me right now but you. I was like, I don't even know how this is happening. But so we start working together. And it's every day now that I have to see him for 8 hours a day. And we're in super close proximity. It's in a small situation where we have to be around each other. And so because of that, once again, the energy's popping. And one of my coworkers, he was like, you guys are like twins. At this point, I had just come across the twin flame concept via the videos that I had been watching. And when I had seen the twin flame concept, I was like, geez, that sounds like a lot like me and the guy at my job. Like, damn, it's kind of crazy. But I didn't think too much of it. And so one day, a coworker of ours, she's an artist, and she had done this little art piece on soulmates. So now I'm at his house, and he's asking me, he says, what do you think about the concept of soulmates? Do you think that it's about, people having a lesson, and what do you think? And he's like, well, I've always been looking for my soulmate, and all this and all that. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, I don't really look for love, so that's weird to me that you do that. Like, I let love come to me energetically. I don't look for love. I know whatever the universe has around me is what's right for me. It was kind of like what the conversation was. And so, you know, we talked about that. And, I just remember thinking to myself, like, why is this guy talking to me about this stuff? Like, and so then we were talking about home decor because we're into that. And he was talking about how he wanted an obelisk for his coffee table, an Egyptian obelisk shaped like this. Now, I love design. I love designing my home and stuff. So, you know, I just go to Home Goods casually. So one day I go to Home Goods. I walk into Home Goods. It's obelisks everywhere. All shapes and sizes and materials and colors. And I was like, whoa. So I took a few pictures of them. And then the next day at work, I was like, man, I came to work. I saw all these. I was like, look at all these obelisks I saw at Home Goods. And one of them I could see could fit perfectly on his coffee table. It was perfect. So I showed it to him, and I was like, I'm going to go back there, you know, today. Let me know if you want me to pick it up for you. So, like, he gave me the money, and I went to pick it up. So I brought it to his house. And when I put the obelisk on the coffee table, it looked like it grew out of the coffee table. Like it was a perfect match. And so I don't know what it was about that moment, but that's when he decides to show me information on soulmates, right? He's like, read this article on soulmates. And I'm reading it. I was like, yeah, I'm cool. I guess. And my intuition is like, watch this fool bring out the twin flame shit next. Because, see, something about him was so spiritual, but also not. I was like, there's conflict happening here because he was giving me conflict. And I'm usually never in conflict with my spirituality, but suddenly I was having it through dealing with him. So then he's like, yeah, and so, like, look at this one. This is about twin flames. Have you heard of that? I acted like I didn't know what it was. I was like, oh, what's that? Oh, I don't know. And he's like, yeah, you know, twin flame. And I'm looking at him like, oh, my God, you are ridiculous. And so in this twin flame article, it was like had the various stages. And the stage 1 was the karmic relationship. And so he's like, yeah, I feel like I'm in stage 1. Like I was like, yeah, okay, whoever's whoever's not at your house right now, that's who your karmic is, because I don't know why I'm at your house. But when I would be sitting at his couch, I would always have this image of a woman coming to like beat up my car. And so I'd always be like, I'm here, but I'm not supposed to be here. And why am I here? And why am I here when I'm not supposed to be here? And you don't like me. It just wasn't making sense to me. But I would go because when I was around him, oh my God, the feeling. You would make yourself look like a fool to have this feeling for 5 minutes. Okay? And so I'm going in at 50 minutes right now. I feel like it's a lot. But I'm going to leave off here talking about the obelisk. Oh, wait, no. We got to finish this up. So obelisk is perfect. He gives me this twin flame information. I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is cool. And I acted really, really interested. Reading articles, all the articles I'd already read. I'm like now rereading in front of him. Like, this is interesting. And so that Monday at work or sometime, I don't know, he shows me like these 3 masks. I was like, oh man, those masks are beautiful. I was like, oh, I'm going to steal those masks from you if you get them. Those are my masks. They'll be perfect in my place. Like, you're wilding, you're bugging, right? Give me those masks. You know, I had no intention of getting the masks. They're beautiful though, but you know. So, and at this point, I'm like, okay, this guy doesn't like me. You know, it's whatever. I thought I was in love, but it's one-sided. I'm dealing with that heartbreak. Quietly, silently, peacefully. And and then I get a text from him. And it's like 9 o'clock at night. And he's like, hey, can you come by in a little bit? I was like, are you talking to me? Like, I came by and I was hanging out. His nephew was there. They were getting ready for a family wedding that was to be that weekend. And he's talking to me, and he and his nephew come back in the house. They leave. They come back in the house with these 3 huge masks. They're the most beautiful masks I've ever seen. And he presented them to me. He surprised me. And that was something that also never happened in my marriage. Like, my husband never surprised me with anything. And so once again, I was like, no, I was healing this broken heart. And then he opened up the heart chakra again. It was so romantic. The masks were beautiful. I was like, oh, God. Why, man? So now I have these masks. But I literally have nobody in my life at this moment. So I didn't have anybody to help me hang the masks. So I asked him, I said, can you help me hang the masks? He's like, of course. And so I went to his house. This is like early July this is late June 2017 now. Went to his house. We're talking. He's like, come by anytime. You're always welcome here. Let me know when I can come hang the masks for you. It's all good, right? Well, I guess what happened was the woman he was dealing with came back in his life, because after that, I never went back to his house. And I, like, hanging the mask, by the time he came and hung the masks, it's like he came to my place, which he had never been to, and he really could not wait to leave. He didn't want to be here. He brought a friend with him. They put the masks up real quick, and they left. And I just remember thinking, like, and he didn't even drink the water that I offered him, which, you know, being from a Caribbean background, that was very disrespectful. So I was like, ugh, yuck. So I have these beautiful masks hanging in my house, and then I don't see him anymore. The summer program is over, and now it's time for a separation again. So months go by, I don't see him. I'm working on myself. I'm raising my vibration. I'm into my spirituality. I'm now healing from the heartbreak of whatever that was, constantly forgiving myself, feeling like a fool, feeling like an idiot, feeling alone, feeling like a woman of bad judgment, feeling unattractive, feeling like the kid who teased me came back and teased me some more, feeling like the bullied kid, everything purging, coming out. So I had to go hard on my spirituality, meditation, exercise, self-care, everything. I changed my look because I was done with everything, that old self. I discarded it and my new self emerged. And so when school started again, we were back around each other, and I looked very different. And he came up to me and mentioned it. He's like, wow, you look so different. There's light coming from you. I'm like, thank you, you know. But I was over it. I was like, you're an asshole, dude. Like, don't even talk to me. Like, you're gross. And so, you know, we would see each other at work, but it was the same, you know. Then he came and he brought me a poem. You know, this time the poem is about, like, black men should be able to date who they want, you know, and they want to date white women or light-skinned women. Or, it's like, once again, coming at me like, read this poem about how I like everybody but you. I was like, yo, what is wrong? Like, this is a straight up diss, So this was it's funny, this was November 11th, and he came into work, signed in, and he says, oh, it's 11/11 today. Does that mean anything? And you know what I said? I said, yes, Veterans Day. Because at that point, 11/11 didn't mean crap to me. I was like, this asshole, are you kidding me? And so on that day, he presents me this poem about, just loving anything but a woman who's like me. And it was so rude. I called him and told him how rude it was. Like, how ridiculous it was. Like, it's okay to have your preference, but if you like to date a white woman or a mixed woman or a woman who's not like me, you don't need to tell me that. You're telling me that to harm and offend me. Why are we even talking about this? Why are you even presenting that part of yourself to me? It's like, now you just want to hurt me. You just want to hurl stones at me. And so I cussed him out for like a good hour, but when I hung up the phone on that November 11th conversation, it was 1 hour and 11 minutes. And I just looked and I laughed. I was like, no! Oh, God. So, yeah. So that continued that way. We'd see each other at work. He took all my energy and I'd never see him. We'd never text. Or sometimes I would text him and be like, it was so good to talk to you. It feels great. And normally he'd be like, oh, same here, right back at you. But this time he was just like, cool. And I was like, okay, now I've learned enough. When I get the one text back, don't text back. It's over. So I never texted him again. And that was it. And I'd see him at work. And now we were working less together. And I was just glad it was over. We used to always talk about vintage cars and stuff. And it would just be really awesome. So, let's fast forward it now to this summer. Once again, we're working together. Last summer, we talked about our dream cars that we wanted. So, last week, I'm at work, and it's a Thursday, and he points out the window. He's like, look at my new car that I got, and it's a vintage, like a 1950-something Jaguar. It's beautiful. I was like, wow, it's amazing. He's like, do you want to take a spin? You want to take a spin around the block with me? I'm like, absolutely. Because now I'm like, I hate you, but I love you, and I know what this is, but my human is mad at you and I hate you and I don't fuck with you, but my soul loves every minute, so we're going to go on this drive. So I went on this drive with him around the block. Well, it's like a 15-minute drive around. We have an hour lunch break, so we went cruising a little bit, and it was so fun, and I took some video because I really want to show my friends who's this guy at my job I keep talking about or whatever. And so I took some video, and I just had so much joy. And in the video, you see how happy we are together. But it's like, it means nothing to him, so what can I do? And he's not attracted to me, so what can I do? That's kind of where I'm at today. And so yesterday, a funny thing happened at work where we had a new caterer come in and do some food, and the food looked so gross. He and I decided to go get lunch. So so now we're driving through this with this really lovely vintage car, and we just go get some food, and it's like I'm just loving every minute of it, and so it's just so interesting. So literally, that's where I am in my twin flame relationship right now. We don't hang out anymore. Ever since my divorce was final July of 2017, he has not entertained me since my divorce was final, and he knew when that was. He hasn't entertained me since then. I don't know what that's about. At this point, it's not my job to know. So where I leave you all today, in terms of right now the energies of the divine masculine who is struggling with their feelings, here I have this man at my job, my twin flame, who doesn't like me supposedly, but can't wait to have me in the passenger seat of his vintage car, driving around the town real quick on a lunch break. However, this is my thing. There's still no effort outside of work, and that's why I have pause. Because what I've decided for me is if a man is going to be with me, I need that effort. I didn't get it in my marriage, and it was awful. And so at this point, no matter how I feel, if a person doesn't put effort in, I have nothing for them. So divine masculines, what I have to say to you from the divine feminine perspective is go ahead and put that effort in. If you want your divine feminine, she'll appreciate it. If you don't put that effort in, you're going to lose her. So that was my rundown of my twin flame journey. I saw how much I was talking, how long it was going, so I ran through a few things. But let me know if anything there resonated with you or reminded you of your own journey. Also, if there's moments you need me to clarify, I could gladly do that as well. Just to let you guys know, I've been playing with these crystals here. These crystals they called to me today as I was setting up. I'm surrounded by selenite, which brings mental clarity, which I ask for myself and for all divine feminines during this journey. Mental clarity. It's a cleanser. It instills deep peace within you. It helps with future visioning and also to ascertain what happened in the past. And right now, even with my own twin flame journey, I'm now ascertaining what did happen in the past, what lessons I've learned, what that means to me. And I hope that all for you as well, divine feminine. And then also we have this black obsidian, the snowflake obsidian. And it calms and soothes, puts you in the right frame of mind, and brings attention to ingrained patterns and teaches you how to value your mistakes and successes. So with that, divine feminine, I leave you with that good crystal energy. And I hope that this has fed you. And I mean, I am going to go into more detail, but I wanted to give you all that quick rundown. The video is an hour long. I'm so sorry. But I love you guys, and thank you so much for subscribing. Let me know your thoughts and everything in the comments below. Peace.